Throne of Eldraine is upon us, my friends, and it is time for spoiler season. I am Jeremy from LandSayGo, and I am here to go over the spoilers for September 4th, 2019, officially the first day of spoilers. And if you ask me, a pretty heavy day in terms of the content that we're going to be covering. A lot of these cards were spoiled from the new Throne of Eldraine Sideline Brawl event that came out in Arena. People doing scream caps, popping these cards up there for those players that are not playing Arena. So let's jump right into this. The Circle of Loyalty, a 6 converted mana cost legendary artifact that says the spell costs, this spell costs 1 less to cast for each knight you control. Creatures you control get +1/+1. Whenever you cast a legendary spell, create a 2/2 white knight creature token with vigilance. And for 3 and a white, you can create a 2/2 white knight creature token with vigilance by tapping this legendary artifact. Now, this isn't quite as bonkers in terms of pace as maybe History of Benalia, but that's rotating out. It's time for us to do different things. And if the Knight deck that we just saw and how fast-paced that is tells us anything, the Circle of Loyalty may end up being tremendously good. A new Planeswalker character was introduced to the multiverse in Oko Thief of Crowns. And Oko Thief of Crowns promises to be very, very good, folks. 3 converted mana cost, 1, a green and a blue for a 4 loyalty planeswalker. On the +2, you can create a food token, and we know now that those are artifacts that you can run 2 colorless through, tap it, gain 3 life. There's a lot of sacrifice mechanics out there in Standard right now, and just generating those additional tokens could give us some fuel for additional functionality. On the +1, though, it can strip an artifact or a creature of all abilities, and that artifact or creature becomes a 3/3 green elk creature token. That is obnoxiously powerful. The implications of how powerful that just might be as a sideboard card on a go-forward basis may not really sink in until we actually see it in action, but I can tell you right now that at 3, it makes it competitive, and just how deep this one goes down the rabbit hole, we don't really know yet. On the -5, though, we can exchange control of target artifact or creature that we control, and target creature and opponent controls with power 3 or less. There's all kinds of shenanigans getting ready to take place with this, folks. Oko Thief of Crowns promises to make an impact in his first version ever printed. This will be a very highly collectible card, something that everybody's going to want to get their hands on. Rankle, Master of Pranks, so a new 4 CMC 3/3 Flying Haste Fairy Rogue, also a legendary creature. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you can choose any number of these 3 abilities. So each player discards a card, each player loses a life and draws a card, or each player sacrifices a creature. That screams control to me. Really horrible levels of control, actually. The fact that it has flying and haste, this card's going to be seen everywhere. Not just because it's mythic, but because it's flying, haste, it's a 3/3, and when you are able to choose any of those 3 abilities, we are talking about some really horrible stuff taking place. The Royal Scions. So we were talking about in a podcast not too long ago, Devo and I, that Will and Rowan actually share a spark according to the lore. And lo and behold, here they are, literally joined at the hip. Or at least the artwork looks that way. They're probably not. They're standing back to back, but they're definitely sharing a spark. And apparently sparks are located right around where your kidneys are. On the +1, they are again 3 converted mana cost for a 5 loyalty planeswalker, but on the +1 you can draw a card and discard a card. On another +1 ability, target creature gets +2/+0 and gains first strike and trample until end of turn. Not too shabby. And then on the -8, draw 4 cards, and when you do, the Royal Scions deals damage to any target equal to the number of cards in your hand. Crazy good, right? A new Garruk is back, ladies and gentlemen. Garruk, Cursed Huntsman, coming back to us again. A 5 loyalty planeswalker for 6. On a 0, create 2/2 green wolf creature tokens, black and green wolf creature tokens. With when this creature dies, put a loyalty counter on each Garruk you control. On the -3, destroy target creature, draw a card. On the -6, you get an emblem with creatures you control get +3/+3 and have trample. I don't know about you guys, but this seems really good. Maybe not old Garruk good, but really good. And finally, Garrick is back in the Magic universe, back into Standard, right where he belongs. A really cool 2 converted mana cost white enchantment called All That Glitters. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact and enchantment you control. Super cool card. I like it. I feel like the Starfield Mystic may actually finally see some play. Unless that card's rotating, I can't really remember. Fairy Formation, 5 converted mana cost for a 5/4 flyer that lets you run 4 mana through it and generate a 1/1 blue fairy creature token with flying and draw a card. Kefnet God Eternal, anybody? Seems good. Maybe Yan Ling? Ugh. Things could get really nasty with this card. Good thing Favorable Winds is rotating, but there's still some craziness that's probably going to go on with Fairy Formation. I actually think it's playable and constructed. I really do. Piper of the Swarm for 2 converted mana cost for a 1/3 human warlock. Rats you control have menace. For 2, you can create a 1/1 black rat creature token. For 4, sacrifice 3 rats. You can gain control of target creature. Seems decent, little slow, probably more of a limited card, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if there's more rats to come here, based upon some of the additional cards we'll be seeing tonight. Crystal Slipper, a 2 converted mana cost artifact that is a haste enabler with an equip 1 cost. Great card. And at common, this is a great card. This will be playable in limited, maybe potentially playable in constructed. I would say that card is playable in Commander in a big way. Gilded Goose, 1 green for a 0/2 flyer, and when it enters the battlefield, you create a food token. For 2 additional, a colorless and a green, you can tap it and create a food token. You can tap it and sacrifice a food and add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. That is a neat little enabler, especially if it's a deck full of food. Everybody's going to get fat off the Gilded Goose, it looks like. Venerable Knight, 2/1 for 1 white mana. Another 2/1 Knight for 1 white mana. When it dies, you can put a +1/+1 counter on target knight you control. Nice. Real good, actually. It's a great 1-drop. Midnight Clock for 2 colorless and a blue artifact. Tap and add a blue mana. An artifact that taps and adds blue. Could we find a use for that, maybe? I don't know. Maybe. But for 2 colorless and a blue, put an hour counter on Midnight Clock. At the beginning of each upkeep, put an hour counter on Midnight Clock. When the 12th hour counter is put on Midnight Clock, shuffle your hand and graveyard into your library, then draw 7 cards and exile the Midnight Clock. Debo wasn't too keen on this card, but I am. I actually think it's pretty cool. I think in a limited capacity, I hope I draw one of those at pre-release. Taste of Death. Each player sacrifices 3 creatures and you create 3 food tokens for 6 converted mana cost, 4 and 2 black. Great card. Really is a great card. Especially in Arena right now in that Brawl format with those 4 pre-constructed decks, feels really good to draw that one. Embereth Shieldbreaker, the first of those adventure cards that we'll see tonight. Probably the first of many that we'll see in the set, but a 2/1 for 2. It's got sorcery. So the way that these work is you're actually able to cast that sorcery from your hand, the creature goes to exile, and then you can cast that creature from exile. Or you can cast the creature for the 2/1 for its converted mana cost. But the adventure takes place, so you can destroy an artifact, it goes into exile, and you can cast it later. Pretty cool. So far, nothing really tremendously powerful with this, but decent nonetheless. So the Lovestruck Beast. This is a great green creature. I love this. Beast Noble. For 3 converted mana cost, you get a 5/5, and it can't attack unless you control a 1/1 creature. So for 1 green on turn 1, you can make a 1/1 white human creature token, and then go immediately on turn 3 into the 5/5. This is interesting, though, that you can't attack with it unless you have specifically a 1/1 creature. So any modifications to power and toughness stop it from attacking. It's interesting, but weird. It's a weird card. It's weird. All right, so Silver Flame Ritual. Put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Sorcery speed for 3 and a white. If you paid 3 or more white mana to cast Silver Flame Ritual, creatures you control gain vigilance until end of turn. Seems decent. It is, of course, a common, probably only going to see play in limited formats, if at all. Animating Fairy for 2 colorless and a blue for a 2/2 flyer. Again, sorcery speed, adventure, target non-creature artifact you control becomes a 0/0 artifact creature. Put 4 +1/+1 counters on it. Cool. We'll see if we can use it. Bell of the Brawl, 2 colorless and a black for a 3/2 menace, and whenever it attacks other night creatures you control get +1/+0. They'll probably end up being better night choices as we work through the rest of the set, but certainly don't have any problems with this one for initial impressions. Killing Fire. So for 2 colorless and a red at instant speed, we can deal 3 damage to any target. Okay, fair for an uncommon, not bad. But if you paid 3 red to cast this spell, it deals 4 damage to that target instead. I don't know how long you guys have been playing Magic, but 4 damage to any target at instant speed is way different than 3 damage to any target at instant speed. Seems like it might have an opportunity to see some play. I don't know how effective mid-range red is going to be on a go-forward basis, but I'm certainly not disappointed with more burn. I'm good with that. We've got the Beanstalk Giant dropping in. 6 colorless and a green for a giant creature. It's got a Fertile Footprints, the name of the adventure. Sorcery speed for 2 and a green. You can search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, and then shuffle your library. And then the Giant's power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control. So this is a limited bomb. That is a bomb. The fact that you only get 1 land out of it, though, before you actually have to cast the creature from exile is a little disappointing. But we don't know yet if anything in Throne of Eldraine is actually going to give us the ability to cast multiple adventures and leave those creatures in exile. Like if we can recast adventures, or we just can constantly go on an adventure. Whatever it is, the adventure mechanic's not lackluster, it's just we haven't seen the full potential of it just yet. I'm looking forward to doing that. Shining Armor. Flash. When Shining Armor enters the battlefield, attach it to target knight you control. This is an equipment, 1 colorless and a white. Equipped creature gets +0/+2 and has vigilance. Pretty generic. Fairy Vandal. Flash flying for 2 for a 1/2. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Fairy Vandal. Probably going to be some good abusive tactics with that. Trust me. Foulmire Knight. I like this uncommon a lot, actually. 1 black for a 1/1 Death Toucher. I can't tell you how many times I've had people not swinging at me with 8/8 Tramplers because I had a 1/1 Death Toucher on the battlefield. It is amazing the power that Death Touch has over a board state. And for the instant speed adventure mechanic for 2 colorless and a black, we can draw a card and lose a life and then cast that card. We might be able to cast creatures from exile at instant speed at some point. I don't know. I'm probably reaching. But the Foulmire Knight is definitely one of those cards that you will see in any constructed Knight cards or Knight decks. It is great. It is great. Holy Knight of Embereth for 3 colorless and a red at common. It's got haste. If you paid 3 or more red mana to cast the Holy Knight of Embereth, it enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter. So potentially a 5/2 with haste based upon the mana base that you are using to cast the card. A limited card there. Flaxen Intruder for a single green for a 1/2. It's a human berserker, the card that everybody thought was Goldilocks, and I think it is Goldilocks. All 3 bears. She's wearing 1 around her shoulders, 1 on the wall, and she's standing on 1. So there's a nice dark twist to Goldilocks there. But anyway, she's got a sorcery speed adventure for 5 colorless and 2 green that allows you to create 3 2/2 bear creature tokens. So Bear Force 1 getting an addition for certain. Whenever Flaxen Intruder deals combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice it. When you do, destroy target artifact or enchantment. So, a useful card, uncommon. Again, I think that these adventure cards may be collectible. This is definitely going to be a highly collectible set. I don't know how often we're going to see a return to Fairy Tale Land, and these are very unique in some of the frames, etc. Frogify, not quite Pongify, but this is a great enchantment and aura. And if enchantment things are coming back, like the one that we covered earlier, where they get +1/+1 for each enchantment and artifact that you control, these types of control mechanics will be very valuable. Order of Midnight, another one of those adventure-laden knights for a colorless and a black for a 2/2 human knight. The adventure is sorcery speed for 2 as well. Return target creature from your graveyard to your hand. Flying, and it can't block. So, not great, not bad, not great. Riding a big bird. I love the art. Love it. Keeper of Fables for 3 colorless and 2 green for a 4/5 cat. Whenever 1 or more non-human creatures you control deal damage to a player, draw a card. Interesting that it says non-human, and how many human knights we have covered so far during this video. When Corridor Monitor enters the battlefield, untap target artifact or creature you control. Okay. Sir Conrad the Grim, 3 colorless and 2 black for a 5/4. Whenever another creature dies or a creature is put into a graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield or a creature leaves your graveyard, Sir Conrad the Grim deals 1 damage to each opponent. For a colorless and a black, each player puts the top card of their library into their graveyard. So, maybe some potential uses. Definitely a limited card. We'll see. We'll see what happens with it. I'm not opposed to it, especially if a legendary creature like this can fit into something like, follow me here, Kethis. Maybe this sees Kethis. Maybe we're actually fueling more legendary cards into our graveyard to be able to cast them later using Kethis. Rosethorn Acolyte. 2 colorless and a green for a 2/3 elf druid, so another elf. For a seasonal ritual, we can tap 1 green and add a mana of any color. Interesting that we're getting a sorcery speed cantrip here, that we're essentially mana morphosing for 1, and we can tap and add a mana of any color as well. This is a great elf. Very, very good utility common here. Runaway Together, if the converted mana cost was a little lower, I could see actually using the Rosethorn Acolyte. Runaway Together, instant speed, 1 colorless and 1 blue. Choose 2 different creatures controlled by different players. Return those creatures to their owner's hands. Seems like there could be some decent shenanigans there. This may be my favorite art and card spoiled so far, but baked into a pie. I mean, it's just, oh, it's so awesome. Destroy a creature, make a pie. Cool. Tome Raider, not Tomb Raider, Tome Raider for a colorless and a blue, 2 colorless and a blue for a flying 1/1. When Tome Raider enters the battlefield, draw a card. Cool little fairy. Seems like its utility, probably going to play it in some type of limited capacity. And another black fairy for a single white for a 1/1 flyer. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, each player puts the top card of their library into their graveyard. So, some good disruption there. Don't know if we'll see much value, but certainly there's some type of recursion mechanics that iCollector are going to use. Wishful Merfolk, the first Merfolk that we'll cover tonight. For a colorless and a blue for a 3/2 defender. It loses defender and becomes a human until end of turn. Really like the art there. The art so far is really impressing me. I don't know what everybody else's impressions are, but this has been great stuff so far. Smitten Swordmaster, another human knight, a 2/1 with lifelink, 4/2. And the adventure for 1 black curry favor is you gain X life and each opponent loses X life, where X is the number of knights you control. Awesome. That is amazing, actually. That is an amazing card. Smitten Swordmaster at uncommon. It's just so good. This art on Smitten Swordmaster 2 really looks a lot like Phil Folio's stuff. It just reminds me of this cartoonesque, very fairy tale art. I'm really, really impressed with that card. Witching Well, 1 blue for an artifact. 2, scry 2 when it enters the battlefield, and you can sack it for 4 and draw 2 cards. Witching Well is going to be everywhere in tempo decks. Everywhere. It's a great card. Arcanist's Owl, pretty cool card. Flying 3/3. When it enters the battlefield, we can look at the top 4 cards of our library. We can reveal an artifact or enchantment from among them and put it into our hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Seems valuable. It really does fit into that current Esper deck that's out there in the Brawl event on Arena, which if you haven't played, you can play all of the Brawl decks that are going to be sold in paper right now. Go do it. Fireborn Knight, again, 4 red, white, red, white, red, white, red, white for a double strike 2/3 that you can pump. Pretty cool. Inspiring Veteran, other knights you control get +1/+1. Merrileaf Pixie, 2 for a 2/2 flyer that taps for either green or blue. Awesome uncommon. Awesome. Savvy Hunter, 3 for a 3/3. Whenever it attacks or blocks, create a food token, sacrifice 2 foods. Draw a card. By the way, all of these last cards that we've covered here are ones that you can unlock right now just for playing free games on Arena. Shine Chaser, 1/1, Flying Vigilance. Decent. Steel Claw Lance, piece of equipment. Equips to knights. Seems good. Mardu Knights, definitely a thing. Wintermoor Commander, like this guy. Toughness equal to the number of knights you control. Has Death Touch whenever it attacks. Another knight you control gets indestructible until the end of the turn. Heraldic Banner. Seems good when we're playing it right now in the Knights deck. Adding a mana of any color or the color that you choose when it enters the battlefield seems okay. The +1/+0 is additional benefit, but wouldn't you much rather be playing Judith? I kind of would. Shambling Suit, 3 colorless for a 0/3, and its power is equal to the number of artifacts and or enchantments you control. 3 toughness makes it exceptionally weak, dies to a lot of removal, but could be useful in certain decks. Witch's Oven has proved to be great, actually, in a lot of ways. Witch's Oven is fantastic with Dreadhorde Invasion. It ended up being pretty funny, actually. Golden Egg, pretty cool little artifact. The fact that it draws a card when it enters, we can sack it and add a mana of any color, sack it and gain 3 life. Nice little utility card there. Tournament Grounds, pretty good card. I like it. Specifically a Mardu land for knights or equipment, which is Cottage. As a swamp, this land intrigues me. The fact that if you have 3 swamps in play when you play this, it comes in untapped, but you can put a target creature from your graveyard on top of your library. That is a very powerful card. I think that that's going to end up being a very desirable common. As the set ages off and people continue to play Magic, that'll be one that you want to collect. Go ahead and just start tucking those away in a book right now. And then all the cards from the Brawl decks, you guys. All of these Brawl deck cards. All these Brawl deck cards right here. You can log on to MTG Arena right now and play each of these commanders for Brawl. Alayla, the Artful Provocateur, Chulane, Teller of Tales, Corvold, Fakehurst King, and Sir Gwen, Hero of Ashvale. And they are all awesome. Mace of the Valiant, really cool piece of equipment. Got a chance to use it right now in the free arena games, and it was worthwhile. Silverwing Squadron is intriguing. 5 colorless and a white, flying vigilance, power and toughness equal the number of creatures you control. Pretty good. Whenever Silverwing Squadron attacks, create a 2/2 white knight creature token with vigilance equal to the number of opponents you have. That's a mean card, folks. Shimmer Dragon. This is basically, well, it's amazing. It's an amazing card. Shimmer Dragon, flying, as long as you control 4 or more artifacts. Shimmer Dragon has hexproof. Tap 2 untapped artifacts you control and draw a card. Workshop Elders. Artifact creatures you control have flying. The beginning of combat on your turn, you may have target non-creature artifact you control become a 0/0 artifact creature, and if you do, put 4 +1/+1 counters on it. Why not? Seems good, but very expensive at 7. Chittering Witch, a commander card. Just read it. You get rats equal to the number of opponents you control. Embereth Skyblazer. As long as it's your turn, Embereth Skyblazer has flying. Whenever Embereth Skyblazer attacks, you may pay 3. If you do, creatures you control get +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is the number of opponents you have. Commander card. Steelbane Hydra was spoiled today. For X and 2 green, we get a 0/0. It's essentially a Hydra, gets +1/+1 counters. This may be included in a Green Things Matter deck with Nissa Who Shakes the World. Thorn Mammoth, and just being able to play it during the free Brawl events has turned out to be exceptional. A very, very good card, and I love it. Banish into Fable, also a great top-end control instant speed spell that can leave your opponent kind of reeling, especially if they're not able to recover quickly and you're popping out 2/2 white knight creature tokens with vigilance. Gluttonous Troll looks great. 2 colorless, a black, and a green for a 3/3 trampler. And when it enters the battlefield, create a number of food tokens equal to the number of opponents you have. So again, more commander cards being printed here, and you can sacrifice another non-land permanent, so your food, and it'll get +2/+2 until end of turn. Knight's Charge is interesting. I got a chance to play that in the Mardu Knights deck that's available on Arena. 1 colorless, 1 white, and a black. Whenever a knight you control attacks, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So start stacking up those low casting cost knights, and Knight's Charge becomes pretty bad indeed. And then you can just recur everything back from the graveyard for 8 mana. It is a disastrous card when you are actually able to get to that 8 mana switch. And oftentimes you're exchanging creatures off and putting lands into the battlefield anyway, so Knight's Charge ends up being really interesting. Tome of Legends. This card has got me drooling. I love this card. 2 colorless, Tome of Legends enters the battlefield with a page counter on it. Whenever your commander enters the battlefield or attacks, put a page counter on Tome of Legends, and then for 1 colorless mana, you can tap and remove a page counter from Tome of Legends and draw a card. Have you guys ever heard of something called Proliferate or Atraxa? Ooh, horrible stuff. Horrible stuff. That's a good card, and I think it'll end up being a commander staple and very, very valuable. Arcane Signet. 2 colorless, add a mana of any color. We got Command Tower, and then of course, the entering the battlefield tapped Thornwood Falls, Windscarred Crag, gain 1 life. Cards are back as well. And that does it for spoilers for September 4th, 2019. I am Jeremy with LandSayGo, and we will be back tomorrow with more spoilers. Stay tuned.